Darren Tuttle here. It's storm season in Oklahoma, and with that comes torrential rain, high winds, and hail. To protect your home and your family from these threats, the one roofing company you should trust is Ferguson Roof Systems. They've been providing the best in roofing services for nearly half a century. Ferguson is Oklahoma's full-service roofing company, certified with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating and a 5-star rating on Google. And with Ferguson now offering Class 4 impact-resistant shingles, now is the time to trust them with your home's roof. Get started today at FergusonRoofSystems.com.
Hey everyone, Meteorologist Darren Tuttle back with you again. It is about 9:38. We're going to talk about the upcoming severe weather potential that may happen on Wednesday. Also see if anything's going to come in here in the far western Oklahoma on Tuesday. So that's going to be our focus in here for tonight. So thanks for joining me here on AT's Weather Live. By the way, I see you, Ron. Thank you for the stars, my friend. Good to see again some of you guys that came out to Tulsa for the Severe Weather Expo. And also, of course, when we had last month here in Oklahoma City. So it's always great to see and meet many of you guys out there and shake hands and share stories. It's all good. Everybody, the funny thing is, the commonality is weather. No matter where you go, you can always talk about the weather. It doesn't get anybody all heated up. Well, it used to. Now you got global warming. Okay, so I take all that back. How sad. There's nothing we can talk about anymore without getting into a heated debate. Welcome to humanity. All right, well, we'll get into the debate of weather, find out what's shaking and baking in that department. So thanks for watching. By the way, let's see, you guys on, let me click on my little button here. If you are not getting notified again when I go live on Facebook and it's a little bit late, you can click the link that I'm posting now in the comments section. That way you will not be late anymore, and you can opt into that, and I will send you a direct link when I do go live. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in on Rumble, also on YouTube. I see you out there as well in the YouTube land. Also, you guys on Twitter, appreciate you guys tuning in, and then finally on Facebook. So, all right, I think that's all the housekeeping I need to get in order. So let's jump on into it and find out what's coming our way. So out there currently, in case you haven't noticed, it was a gorgeous day today. We've cooled down a little bit. We're at 72 degrees. That's the temperature in my backyard from my Tempest weather station. You can pick one up, hit that QR code. It'll take you directly to a link. You can type in my promo code and save some money on that little weather station that you got pictured right here over my left shoulder. That's all it is. That little bitty guy right there sits on a pole. Or it's like a little, whatever you want to put it on. Put it on a flat plane, like on the top of a fence post, whatever you want to do. Easy peasy. All right, let's go on into the pictures here. First things first, temperatures out there today were really nice. We saw some 80s and some 70s, but it's kind of that low humidity version, so it's not oppressive at all. It's actually kind of cool in your shade. This is perfect. This is ideal weather. This is what they get out there in a sunny California a lot of the times. As far as temperatures out there currently, like I said, we've cooled down now into the 70s and now some 60s out there across the state. And the winds did get a little breezy today. They're still a little breezy now, especially out in western Oklahoma. They're up around 20 plus miles per hour. Did have some showers and a couple thunderstorms in the Panhandle, and they've kind of fallen apart as they worked their way to western Oklahoma. So that's probably a little bit of a wind gust from that little department right there. Now we do have a threat of severe weather, as we mentioned, outlined by the Storm Prediction Center. And right now they kind of favored across Kansas and points north and east from there. Here's a close-up view. Now we do have this little green shaded area. Now, the green shaded area means marginal. In other words, this is a CYA. We may have to change this later, is what that marginal means in this particular case. And that would be down here into this area, because what we're going to watch for is basically a dry line setup, something like this. And we're going to watch for the potential for some thunderstorms to kind of form along this dry line in these areas. Now, it's easier call up here in the central Kansas due to some other things. We'll get to that here in a minute. But needless to say, that is our threat for Wednesday. Tuesday, there is a little bit of a risk of severe weather out here across far western Oklahoma. It's extremely low, though. There's better opportunities here on Wednesday. And as far as the main hazards go, large hail damaging winds, sure. But we're in that window now, and it still looks like tornadoes would be a possibility as well. But also fire danger out here in western Oklahoma for Wednesday afternoon with those winds gusting and some very dry conditions from around Clinton up north and west and south and west from there. So kind of keep that in mind. 'Tis the season until we all get some decent rain. So what do the machine learning algorithms think? In other words, what does the AI have to say about Wednesday? Would you look at this? It has a big favor of tornadoes here across northern and central Oklahoma down to probably about the Lawton area. back up here into the eastern half of Kansas, dipping into Missouri and Iowa. Also likes the hail threat in that same zone, and some damaging wind as well. So the algorithms are in favor of severe weather. Now, what has changed since my blog Sunday morning when I put all that together in the data? That the jet stream has sped up just a bit. So watch this little nose come in. See this little bright colors you see on the map? West to east. Look how it kind of comes in right in Oklahoma. So there it's west on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, right at the last minute at basically 6 to 7 o'clock, it does nose into central Oklahoma. That is a favored position of the upper jet, which means that the storms will have a lot better evacuating of air aloft, which means better storm structure, which means longer lived storms, which means better storm dynamics, and they won't fall apart and try to reorganize so much. A lot of things will happen when you get a jet overhead, so that's one of the main things that'll influence us. And as we go through the evening, that jet kind of stays across this region, so any storms that do happen to form should have a little extra push with the air aloft to kind of keep them going. And there's not a whole lot of that in Kansas. There's a split here, kind of a vacuum. That is a little bit of a weakness up there. We'll talk about that too. Here's a look at the lower level lift in the atmosphere at 700 millibars. This is on the dry line, so all this bright color represents we're going to have a lot of lift at that layer of the atmosphere. And if we look as far as the mid-level vorticity or spin in the atmosphere, we do have a little bit of light lift that moves through and a kind of a light southwesterly flow aloft. It's kind of more of a subtle versus a brute forcing type event. All right, let's take a look at where the dry line is going to set up. So again, the darker blues is where the moisture comes in with dew points in the 60s. So let's go into Friday afternoon. We'll stop it right here about the 4 to 5 o'clock hour. And what you're going to find is, on this particular map here, the surface low dipping up here, which is basically going to be the triple point kind of in this area. And what you have from that kind of trails a cold front in this area. And then what we have to focus on is what comes out of this zone, which is bebops down into this direction. That's the dry line. So this is where we would focus to see if we can't get some thunderstorms to form along this dry line, and they would move into central Oklahoma as a result. But a lot of times favored lift in the atmosphere kind of favors this spot right here for trouble. And then if you can get like a little bit of a mini bulge here in west central Oklahoma, maybe in this little zone right here. So those would kind of be two favorite areas when you look at the dew point value for the, and again, the values up here into the 60s. Mid to upper 60s here during the evenings. That's plenty of low-level moisture to keep the instability going overnight. Now, if you'll notice here on Thursday morning, there's a sharp line in the sand here. We've got the dry air coming back in. These dew point values here into the 30s. Again, the 60s down in here. Well, that's because a cold front will be clearing things out here Thursday morning. But it'll take quite a while, so expect for that front to help to trigger a couple of thunderstorms down here in far southeastern Oklahoma by Thursday afternoon. So that'll be a little bit of a mini severe weather risk for you guys. Okay, so as we go from the 4 to 5 to 6 o'clock hour, we're going to look at this area right here. This is where the models think there'll be a weakness in the cap. So let's go ahead and through time, let's step this through. Let's see what we come up with. So where it has the dry line, which is pretty much right here, it's a little thin line. East of that, it does have the potential for any circulations, in other words, air that kind of forms along that boundary, kind of does this little deal. All right, so this little deal, these little currents go up and then down, up and then down. It's called the dry line circulation. Well, if they do kind of happen to merge into this region, according to this model, it would be favorable for those to kind of hold together and start to grow and get rooted and to produce a thunderstorm, because it's kind of in a favorable zone where the cap is very weak. We'll see, though, if the model does actually produce thunderstorms given that environment. Let's see here. Let's go to the late afternoon and evening. We'll stop you at around 7 o'clock. So 7 o'clock is kind of when the low-level jet starts to kick in. So you get a lot of winds just off the surface that start screaming in from the south direction. Well, that helps to keep the shear going in the evening hour to kind of spin things up a bit. So the tornado parameter, in other words, the significant tornado parameter, it's a EF2 strength tornado or stronger. You want to look for those indices where things kind of come together. And it does happen across, let's see. So here's Oklahoma County. Let's do this for you. So here's Oklahoma County right here. It's Canadian County. So this, again, just east of the dry line, that favored area where there wasn't a strong cap in place. So this is where your parameters are setting up right here, very favorable in nature. As we go through the evening hours, the best parameters actually are kind of keep shifting westward because the dry line will retreat. So that means that if there were to be a storm that were to fire in this well after dark, it would have a very favorable environment to work with. Now, typically, though, in that area, the cap builds back in, so you don't get any thunderstorms to develop. But the point being is that the atmosphere reloads in that area. You still have a little bit of a cap here that's built in, but cape is still quite substantial. Cap is still fairly weak, but it's not. It should not be breakable given that environment. But a nice photograph, tornado hazard type, and a significant tornado at that. But that's again in an area that should not see any thunderstorm development. If we back this up a bit, let's go to 7 o'clock hour. Let's just pick Western Canadian County, for example. We'll just kind of pick what that environment looks like. Should we have a storm at that point in time? So again, tornado will be the hazard type. Again, EF2 potential tornado strength or stronger. Significant hail, 2 to maybe 3 inches in diameter. Has a lot of analog cases that kind of go with this idea, which in other words, back in time historically, is kind of that favored. Cape values up around 3,000 plus. Again, a pretty still cap holding into the 70s to minus 80. So we have to have pretty good convergence on the dry line to break that. But that's just that one point I picked. Ship model is 2.6. So that means some large hail, greater than 2 inches in diameter for sure. So in other words, we can pick little point soundings all day long. But the bottom line is you have the risk for large hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes should any storm form. If you look at the Cape versus shear combination, I'll just stop it. Let's go to 6 o'clock. Or do you want to go to 7? Yeah, it doesn't really matter. In that area, I-35 corridor and points to the west is this little sweet spot where the best instability is. And you see the little triangle approaches, right here to here to here. Again, that's the turning with winds with height as you go from the surface to the mid-levels of the atmosphere. So this whole area would be conducive for supercell type storms. And again, as we said, predicting a potential tornado. Now, we mentioned also a brief opportunity for some storms tomorrow afternoon across the Texas Panhandle. So those are late afternoon, 5, 6, and 7 o'clock. But you can see they have a tendency to fall apart pretty rapidly after dusk. So that'll be the case here for tomorrow. So if one does sneak across the border, don't look for it to do much. Okay, let's take a look here at the 5, 6 o'clock hour. Does the dry line trigger any storms? According to this model, 5, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, it does not. It says that cap isn't that weak. It still holds, and we get no storms at all. And that can easily be the outcome. These conditional forecasts are very challenging and difficult because of the cap strength. And the models always have a hard time with them. Let's see, there's 4 o'clock in the morning. Remember that cold front coming in? So we'll produce a quick round of some showers, maybe a rumble of thunder, very thin line moving through at daybreak Thursday morning. So if you're traveling to work early, you might experience a brief downpour. Tulsa will be a little later than that for you, probably at 8 o'clock as it moves on through. Let's just see a couple of other CAM models. These are convective allowing models. They're supposed to handle conditions like we're talking about a little bit better. We'll see. For tomorrow, here's that one sneaking across the border. It does think it might have a little hail with it right around dusk as it falls apart, Roger Mills County. That's about it, though. Let's go on to the next day for Wednesday. Okay, so it does develop some storms. It produces them on the southern end of the dry line, down here across northwestern Texas, and also got up here, looks like in central Kansas. Let's see, those travel across southern Oklahoma, then fall apart a couple of hours after dark. So it gets into that environment that is not as favorable or conducive across eastern Oklahoma. It still tries to hang on to a few things going on in southern Oklahoma through the 10 o'clock hour before things kind of dwindle off again. So that's what that particular model has to say, and it's one of the newer developments. I believe the other ones haven't come in yet, so we're going to have to wait a few minutes to see what they have to say. So these are also helpful. This one also shows maybe a supercell crossing over east of the Panhandle by tomorrow evening and then falling apart very rapidly, like we discussed. And then let's see, it hasn't gotten into the time window yet to produce storms on the dry line. We'll come back to that one here in a minute. Let's see here. Let's see. We'll talk about this as well. When you talk about dry line convergence, you need very strong convergence to help break if there's still a little bit of a cap left. So at 6 o'clock, which is pretty much where you've maximized things in the atmosphere, and you do try to get the hottest part of the day, along with the best moisture, best convergence is when you try to peak 5 to 7 o'clock, that window, to get the storms to try to develop. Internet issues there. Shocker. We'll see if that straightens up. It's buffering right now. Let me see here. For you guys on Facebook world. No errors on my end, so it could be Facebook. Facebook's problem for once. We'll see. Anyway, so this is what we've got here. All right, so you've got a south wind, very strong south wind. This is 6 o'clock on Wednesday. All right, and then you have a southwest wind that comes into this zone. So you do, and this comes into that low up here, and this kind of goes more southwardly. So I personally, I like more of a southeast wind, which is hard to get on a dryline circulation. But for better convergence, I like, a better vector here, southeast, southwest, than what we're going to have. So in other words, it's not the best, which is probably why the models don't break the cap and why they don't produce storms. But regardless, this can help you visualize where the dry line is with respect to just wind field. So that right there is what I've got here for you. That's at 6 o'clock. At 7, the winds start to back off and die out here. They're not nearly as strong. They're still strong east of the dry line, up around 30 miles per hour. And then by 8 o'clock, they've pretty much gone, and that allows the dry line to now retreat back to the west, which is typical. Usually retreats at dusk and keeps going back to the west, and after then, you usually don't get any storms. So that's why 7 o'clock is usually your max hour. If we're going to get storms, they usually have to happen by then. All right, so 5 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, we're going to be into the, depends on how much moisture is around, but the models are going to keep us about mid-70s for highs here in central Oklahoma. Near where that dry line is going to set up out in this region, we're still looking at temperatures here into the lower to mid-80s. And that technically could be, the temperatures themselves could be enough to kind of break the cap and get a couple thunderstorms going. So we're right there. We are right there on the edge, and it's you can go either way. I've seen it go either way. This season it's gone either way, and it's gone on the dry side. It could easily go this time around on the stormy side. And if it does, again, those storms will be pretty meaty. By the way, tomorrow afternoon, just got ahead of ourselves, on Tuesday, we're going to be topping out into the upper 70s near 80. We're still slowly increasing humidity, so it still should be a decent day, but it'll be a little bit more windy and a little bit more on the humid side. Now this weekend, there's a cold front, like I mentioned, coming in. There's actually two. There's one coming in again on Friday after this Thursday one. And if you look at these numbers on Sunday morning, you might want to pay attention. If you live in that area of northwestern Oklahoma, from really Ponca City, from around I-35 in this area, dipping down to Canadian County, then probably back out I-40. If you look at the blend of models, they're kind of favoring the low-lying areas for a light freeze, whereas the Panhandle, of course, is in a freeze. It's keeping Oklahoma City kind of in the mid to upper 30s for overnight low on Sunday morning. Same thing for Tulsa. The Canadian model earlier on, I was doing the blog on Sunday, favored this region of the state for seeing temperatures into the 20s. So that has changed. But the signal is there. Some folks may have to protect some plants, at least water them well, burlap, whatever you can do, bring them in, that kind of deal. Because in April, like I said in my blog, you can always get a surprise late season frost or freeze. So watch out for that on Sunday morning. So that's the big story there. For the weekend, as you can see, temperatures will be cooling down both Saturday and Sunday for morning lows. Daytime highs a little bit chilly on Saturday, 57 degrees. And then 66 looks much better. And then, of course, that's after a nice warm couple of days. And right now, the following week looks pretty good. Upper 70s to low 80s. Overnight lows getting back into the mid to upper 50s. Now, the Bermuda grass is going to struggle for April to get going. It really likes 60s. And since it's getting kind of this mixed signal from Mother Nature, it's not performing too well. All right, I'm going to look at a couple of models here that are coming in just as we were discussing. This is an experimental run. It's got a couple storms that do cross over. Looks like in far western, southwestern Oklahoma. But again, they fall apart at sunset tomorrow evening. And then it's not going to come in time to get the next day. Let's see if this other one we're waiting on did. Let's see what it's doing. All right, so there's a signal, maybe of a storm popping here. We have to wait one more hour for that to come in and see what it does with that, which it'll come here in just a second. So a lot of the times, and it's interesting, I did see a study. By the way, thank you, Angela, for the stars tonight. I see out there on Facebook World. There was a paper I read, well, I should say an article over a paper, and they were summarizing things, and that was a couple things here that they've noticed. One is the strength of the cap. In other words, this lid that prevents thunderstorms from happening. It's a temperature inversion a few thousand feet off the ground. That has actually strengthened over time, over, say, the last 20 to 30 years. So we've actually had an increase in capturing, which has helped to reduce the number of severe thunderstorms, which is a good thing, right? And that's all across the U.S. in general. Even though we do have storms, at least we in theory have a little less of them because of that fact alone. The other takeaway is the misnomer of Tornado Alley should be dropped, because technically there really isn't a tornado alley. In other words, tornadoes can happen anywhere across the U.S., especially across the Central Plains and across the Deep South, etc. It's just that in those early days, they were more photogenic, they were easier to see, they happened during the daytime, so the Southern Plains got to be really nicknamed Tornado Alley. Didn't mean they didn't happen in the Deep South or Southeast, it's just they were usually at nighttime. You couldn't see them because of trees, etc. So people were wondering, did Tornado Alley shift? Short answer is no, it's everywhere. It's just some areas get highlighted different years and different during different weather patterns. Okay, so this is a 48-hour map out. It struggled to produce anything here in northwest Oklahoma. That little cell moved into Kansas, didn't really do much. Still trying to get something going on late. So looks like our high-resolution convective allowing models are having a tough time deciding to produce any storms. So basically they're saying it's probably not going to happen. So this is what today's data is showing us. We still have time to see what tomorrow data will look like, because that'll be within the 24-hour window versus the 48-hour window, and they'll be much better. And then sometimes you have to wait and see the day of, like, what are our flagship models thinking at the time, and when those come out, then we can usually give you a better definitive answer, more specifics on the exact placement, the time, all that kind of stuff. But for right now, the setup is there that says you got to watch it, because if storms do develop, you're going to have tornadoes, significant tornadoes at that, damaging wind and large hail. But for right now, it looks like the cap may hold, even though it gets pretty weak for a couple of hours the afternoon along the dry line boundary. So that's what it is. So that is what I have here for you. So that was our data that we looked at tonight, hot off the presses as it came in. We had to sometimes wait a little while to discuss it, because it literally comes in as I talk about it between the 9:45 and 10 o'clock hour this time of the year, because of the daylight saving time change to whatever standard. I don't know, I lose track what we're calling it. Doesn't matter. It's just irritating. But so everything comes in later now because of that fact. All right, that is all I've got here for you. Let me see. Guys, check a couple of comments real quick. Apologize for the buffering. Looks like it may have been YouTube. I saw YouTube and Facebook. So so if there's two of you out there buffering, that means it's on my end. So if it's on my end, then it's on Cox Communications end. Ooh, I might have some news regarding that. There is in my yard a bunch of flags from every utility you can think of with paint all over the yard. Now, I didn't call before I dug, because I wasn't digging. Somebody's digging, and it's a ton. So, and it goes from my area, the neighborhood, skips a few houses down, but it keeps kind of going through. And then it's to the front of the neighborhood, all the way down the street out front, the main street, then the main intersection, then down another street into another neighborhood. So rumor has it, it could be AT&T putting down fiber. Now, if that's the case, Cox, it's been real. Because Cox is not on fiber in my neighborhood. Because they use their grant money to go and put all the cable out to all the boonies first, because they were getting paid by the government to that first before they were to finish laying down fiber in the cities, and where you would think most people would want it and need it. But, money talks, so that's kind of the reason why that happened in that fashion. I'm somewhere on the list, but it could be a couple of years from now or whatever. But meantime, if AT&T drops it tomorrow and they say, dude, you got fiber and you got a gig up, gig down, and you're not going to have any problems buffering to do your weather stuff. Just saying. Just saying. All right. Hey, Shelly, thanks for the stars tonight. I appreciate you. Let's see. I was going to look at a couple of deals. Brents of rain. Yeah, sometimes you have to nowcast, which means you guys have to wait a while and kind of stick with me. Sometimes these weather casts will go along because of it. Brian, is it any good? So Brian's reading the cap. So, yeah, it really is. So what happened is Jody and I took a road trip to see my brother in South Carolina, and we stopped along this place right here. And as you can guess, the name, for you old-timers, there was a little trick you did with the babies that were crying, hence the name on the cap, hence the name of the moonshine place, because it was built a long time ago. They have stories of the guys in the war coming by, and that building still being there. It is an old building, so it's kind of neat to hear some of those stories. Whether or not they were inflated, it's still kind of neat to hear the backstory, that kind of stuff. But as far as the moonshine goes, it is not like Oklahoma moonshine. If you've ever had that, where it's like kerosene and it burns going all the way down and all the way out. This stuff is like drinking water, and you're almost like, no, come on, are you feeding me water? And no, it was smooth. So yeah, it turns out if you do distill it right, which is what these guys do, and as they said, proper moonshine, as if you were listening to their sales pitch, proper moonshine done right, you will not taste it. There will not be this horrific burn going down your throat. So that's what they do, and then like anything else, they can put little flavors in it. So they've got the little flavored moonshine, just like you would at any liquor store now, where I'm telling you, man, if you ever want to be an alcoholic today's day and age, it's real easy because everything tastes so good. Whereas before, you're drinking, kerosene out of a bottle that you could pour in a wound, and do two for one. Those days are over. But anyway, so that's that's a little bit of history on the moonshine deal, which it's funny, man, because like I said, I've had a few tastes of moonshine since I was in college. That stuff was never nice. It would be like, okay, that one and done, I'm good. I'll skip my next turn. You can have it. It was one of those deals. But no, this stuff here, and we brought back a couple of jars with it. We don't even drink, which is a funny thing because we're so healthy. We barely even drink, so I still have these things. I got a couple bottles I hadn't even cracked open, but I need to just because otherwise I'm wasting my money, right? I don't want to do that. So who knows? Maybe I'll toast some moonshine here one night. We'll toast together. Let's see. Mina Oki's asking about the new Durant radar. So yes, there is a new weather radar. It is down into southern Oklahoma. It's in Durant. Now, it is a joint operation from emergency management and the local Native American tribe. And it's kind of a 2 or 3 way partnership. So I'm not all sure who is the main backer, but it's just a deal where they've got a combination going on to help fund it. And that is going to fill the gap down across southern southeastern Oklahoma where we don't have very good radar coverage to track tornadoes. So that should improve the warnings down there. Better warnings, less false alarms, less ability to miss maybe some detections. So that's the benefit of having that radar. It is a C-band radar versus an S-band. Now, S-band goes out farther. A C-band doesn't go out as far, but it has better resolution. So there's a little bit of a trade-off. And the data should be available. Let's see, where are we? 4/17. It should be available by like around the 1st of May, assuming that they got all the rest of the parts in. They were waiting on some waveguide pieces to get built for the manufacturer in Florida. So once that finishes up, they'll install the waveguide, do some more tests, and then it should be good to go. So I'm fingers crossed. That's hoping there's no delays. It'll be the first week of May. If not, well, it is what it is, and they'll miss the bulk of our severe weather season. But at least it'll be there for future storms that do happen. So that's good. All right, so those are some good questions out there on YouTube land. So thanks for tuning those in. All right, let's see. I see you, Janet. Let's see here. Oh, Tracy, let me tell you. Okay, so Penelope found a football that Larry liked. So Larry liked this football. But Larry doesn't like it as much as Penelope does. And now that Penelope has stolen it, Larry hardly ever gets any time with it. And Penelope has a lot more teeth than Larry does. It's sharper teeth and smaller teeth. So she can grip the thing better. So she seems to like it better. But she's a little crazy obsessed with it. All right? And it's kind of almost on the annoying side. But she will play fetch. She just won't stop. You basically have to hide it and put it away. It's cute, but man, so she will squeak that thing. And it's like anything, you have to learn to tune something out. So it's one of those deals. Otherwise, it'll drive you crazy. But she just chomps on it right in front of Larry and just antagonizes him, say, it's my toy now. He just sits there and takes it. Anyway. All right. I have to bring back the kids for the next broadcast and give you guys an update on them. that's about it for me. Thanks again for tuning in tonight. Thanks again for your support. And as always, if you're late to the party on Facebook, and you're like, what did I miss? Make sure you hit this little link that I posted in here. That way you can get notified when we go live so you don't miss it on the next one. Bottom line is a couple of thunderstorms may cross over the Panhandle tomorrow into far western Oklahoma before falling apart. So they might have a little bit of wind and hail left with them before they do. It's pretty rare that it should fall up, weaken pretty fast once they get toward dusk. And then on Wednesday, we have a dry line set up, west central Oklahoma. Everything's favored for strong to severe storms developing along that boundary. Hail, tornado, wind, if the cap can break, which right now miles are holding it to where nothing happens. But it's right at the very edge of where it could be. So we'll see what happens in tomorrow's data. And that's it. All right, that's it for me. You guys, been great. Thanks again for tuning in and asking all your questions and chit-chatting. And we'll do it again tomorrow. Take care, everybody. Sleep well.